I still remember that night vividly, even though it's been almost 4 years now. It was mid-January, peak winter, and I was driving alone from Denver to Salt Lake City for a job interview scheduled the next morning. Snow had been falling all evening, and the road ahead looked like a white river under my headlights. I wasn't new to long drives, but that night felt different. The snow was heavier than the forecast said it would be. My windshield wipers were fighting a losing battle, and every mile looked exactly like the one before it. The GPS kept losing signal, and the road signs were barely visible through the fog. Around 11:40 p.m., I realized I couldn't keep driving, not in that condition. That's when I saw an old, flickering neon sign through the haze. It said Miller's Rest Motel, half the letters dead, the glow soft and yellow like a dying campfire. I pulled in. The parking lot was mostly empty, buried under thin layers of snow. A single truck was parked near the far end. The building looked like it hadn't seen renovation in decades, 2 floors, wood panels turning gray, and a front office lit by a single bulb that buzzed louder than it glowed. Inside, the air smelled faintly of smoke and old carpet. Behind the front desk sat an old man wearing a thick sweater, reading a newspaper. He didn't look surprised to see me, just tired. "Need a room?" he asked without looking up. "Yeah," I said, rubbing my hands for warmth. "Just for the night." He handed me an actual metal key, no card, no computer check-in, and said, "Room 7, far corner. Keep the heat low, the lines freeze if it's too high." That last part stuck with me. When I stepped outside, the snow had stopped. Everything was eerily quiet, no wind, no traffic, not even the crunch of snow under my boots seemed real. Room 7 was at the far end, just like he said. The number was painted crookedly on the door. Inside, the room was simple: a double bed, an old TV, a heater by the window, and wallpaper peeling off near the corners. The air was cold but dry. I switched on the heater and sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through my phone, still no signal. Around 12:15, I turned off the lights, leaving just the dim orange glow of the heater. I wasn't exactly scared, just tired. But I remember feeling watched. Like someone was standing just outside the thin motel curtains. At first, I brushed it off as road fatigue. But a few minutes later, I heard something. Not loud, just a slow, deliberate tap against the window. What? Twice. Then silence. I sat up. The sound didn't come again. I waited, holding my breath. Finally, curiosity got the better of me and I pulled the curtain back. Nothing. Just the empty parking lot and falling snow. When I turned back toward the bed, something caught my eye, a wet footprint near the door. Just one. Barefoot. I froze. I knew I hadn't taken off my boots. And the print wasn't mine. It was smaller. Like a child's. I checked the lock, it was still latched. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I told myself it must have been there before I checked in. But then I noticed the footprint looked fresh. The melted snow was still glistening in the light. I grabbed my jacket, thinking I'd go to the front desk. But when I opened the door, there was nothing. No sound, no footprints outside, not even my own from earlier. The snow was untouched. When I got back inside, the heater had turned off. The room felt suddenly colder, not winter cold, but something heavier. I switched the heater back on, but the orange light just flickered weakly. That's when I heard a voice. A whisper. Not from the window, not from outside, from inside the vent behind the heater. It was faint, almost like someone speaking through static. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like crying. I stepped closer, leaning toward the vent. "Hello," I said. It stopped instantly. Then, 3 slow knocks came from the other side of the wall. I froze. That wall was supposed to connect to the next room, room 8. But I remembered when I parked earlier, room 8's window was boarded up. I wanted to leave. Every instinct screamed at me to leave. But stepping outside into that stormy darkness somehow felt worse. So I stayed up all night, sitting on the chair near the door, watching the heater light flicker and die every few minutes. I must have drifted off at some point because I woke up to daylight seeping through the curtains. The heater was cold. My phone had service again. I packed up fast and went straight to the front office. The old man was there, same as before, like he hadn't moved all night. "How was your stay?" he asked. I hesitated. Fine, I said. But, who's in room 8? He looked at me for the first time then. Really looked at me. His eyes were pale gray like winter clouds. Room 8's been closed since '94, he said quietly. Pipe burst that winter. Haven't had a guest there since. I laughed nervously, trying to read his face. Well, someone was there last night. I heard knocking from that wall. The old man folded his newspaper slowly. You must have heard the wind, he said. Out here it plays tricks when it's cold. I wanted to argue, but something about his tone stopped me. I just nodded, thanked him, and walked out. When I started my car, I looked once more toward the motel. For a second, I thought I saw someone standing in the window of room 8, just a faint shadow, unmoving behind the boarded glass. But when I blinked, it was gone. I didn't look back again. Later that week, out of pure curiosity, I searched for Miller's Rest Motel online. I couldn't find a website or even a listing. Just one old article from a local paper dated 1995. It said the motel had been shut down after a gas leak killed a mother and her daughter in room 8 during a snowstorm. The owner, a man named Walter Miller, reopened the place years later, for travelers who lose their way in the snow. The name on the front desk that night? W. Miller. I don't know what I heard that night. But I've never taken that road again. And whenever I drive in winter, I make sure to keep going no matter how bad the storm gets. Because some roads aren't meant for stopping.